Hi, and welcome to my additional videos to help you in your calligraphy journey. This video is part of a series called Common Mistakes, and I'm going to be talking about holding your breath while writing. As always, I'm using a very dark walnut ink, Hand 101, and blank calligraphy guidelines. In this case, I'm using a 6mm guideline. And if you need additional guidelines, you can see the description on this video and download the set of guidelines if needed. Okay, so let's go. In here, as always, we have the traditional Copperplate proportions, which are 5 units, and the X height in the center. So I'm gonna be using blank paper, and I'm going to be attaching the two of them together. And now I'm just going to be marking the X height just for reference. So a note on holding your breath. A lot of, not all, but many students, when they are learning Copperplate calligraphy, they realize that you need to have, and it is true, you need to have high precision. Everything you are doing is extremely intentional. There is a lot of things to take care of. The angle of the writing, the space inside every letter, the space between each letter, the amount of pressure that we apply on the downstrokes, the amount of width that we apply in every letter. So I do know that there is many aspects that are very challenging for learning this particular style, but holding the breath, it's going to be against us. So this practice is very mindful because it allows us to be very and fully present on the page. So when I'm moving, I'm gonna write the word mint. I have to be looking at all these aspects I have just explained, and I have to be mindful of every step of the way. What am I doing? What is the space inside the letter and space outside of the letter? What is the constant angle of the writing? That the width has to be consistent, and that the downstrokes have to carry the same or very similar amount of shading between all of them. So I do know that there is a lot of things to pay attention to, but how this writing becomes fully mindful is integrating our inhale or our in-breath with our exhale. And so that allows us to be 100% on the page, 100% focused. We stop thinking about a million things that we need to do before and after writing, and it's helping us to clear the mind. And how do we clear the mind? By starting to move slower and synchronizing the movement of the writing with our own breath. The most clear example of this, in my opinion, is the letter F. So letter F is the letter that is the longest letter of the lowercase alphabet. Not all the time, but at least one variation of F occupies the entire 5 units. So as you can see, we have a very long movement across 5 units. Now, how we start to relax into this writing and how we start to slow down our thoughts is by synchronizing the movement. So in here, I'm gonna say that my way of approaching this is every time I do an upstroke equals inhale, and every time we do a downstroke equals exhale. You don't have to do this for every single letter, but if you have this very clear in your mind, there is a way where you start synchronizing the movements to your breath. And what this happens is, number one, your thoughts start to slow down, your nervous system starts to slow down, and you enter into a synchronization, which means you are fully present. You empty your head of like repeating thoughts that have 10 million times a day, and you start to feel a lot more calm and relaxed. That is why every style of every style of calligraphy, I think, in my opinion, is highly meditative. Now, with the example of letter F, we can do this. So I'll start doing this with the ballpoint pen, and then I'll do the same thing with the broad nib, with the pointed pen, and we can have a look at a couple of versions. So if I start writing letter F from the baseline, going up, stop, going up again, inhale again, follow the slant of the writing, which is 55 degrees measured by the horizontal axis. Now, all of this movement is really long, and it's gonna be a very long exhale movement. Once I'm turning around the corner on this area, I'm going to look at the loop I have just created in here, and I'm going to match or try to match the loop I have created on the ascender unit in the descender unit. So up, inhale, tiny loop, cross, and holding hands to the next letter. So if I go over what I just did now, with the breathing, will be like going up, stop, going up again, slow your hand going around the corner, pause for a second or half a second with the breathing, and exhale. Pause the speed of your pen, pause the breathing for half a second, inhale. Tiny loop. This might look like an exaggeration, but I assure you that if you do a few repetitive movements for a while and you start to synchronize the movements, first, you are going to reduce the amount of shaking. And the amount of shaking is natural, so don't beat yourself for it, because you are shaking for two reasons. One, because you might be very new with the tool. Two, because you need more pen driving hours. And I say driving hours because I do a very close analogy with the car driving hours, and it's the same. Why? You don't want to go very fast when you're learning to drive. So you don't want a sports car. In this case, you just want a nib that is going to be very good for you at the beginning. Not a very fancy, not a very expensive, or not a very flexible nib. A nib that is robust. And if you need to change the nib often, you can do it. Pen driving hours means that to get used to the pen that we use in Copperplate, it's very tricky because it's something very different from our normal regular ballpoint pens or pencils that we use, and we need more hours of driving this pen. Second of all, if you just started Copperplate calligraphy and it's the first time you're doing that, obviously you're going to be shaking because you don't feel confident with the tool and you don't know where you're going yet. You are learning all the foundation. So let's start doing this F with the pointed nib. And now we can decide a few things. For example, the amount of pressure that we apply on the down strokes. So let's go up. So I'm gonna start with the same movements I just described. Let me bring a piece of paper so that I'm protecting. Okay, let's go. So I'm gonna go up, starting the letter form. So inhale, let's go here so I have a space. I'm not gonna be messing around. Inhale, stop. Inhale again, rounding. Pause for a second, go around, going up. Exit. Okay, first one. I did a lot of movements while talking, which obviously this doesn't help. So what can I tell to myself with this letter form? I can tell that the loop at the bottom is larger than at the top. It's okay, that happens. The amount of the area of the loops are quite generous. So that means that if I apply this into my lowercase, this width will apply into my lowercase following a very similar angle of the writing, where the width of the letter and the loop are very much connected. If I'm going to build a very narrow loop for my F, as we are going to do now, and I'm not going to be talking while doing it, you will only listen to my reading. Let's do it again and do a very small loop. Okay. If I want, I can stop here if I feel a lot of pressure while doing this letter form, and then keep on going again. Exit. Okay, so you can see how the loops are much smaller. And now my ascender loop and descender loop are much similar to each other. So if I have to match these loops with my lowercase, that will be a U that is a lot narrower. Okay, and so you see the similarities. Okay, now we don't have to do this reading with every single movement. Let me move to a new page, to a new line. But this is when we start to ease into the writing, relax our brain, and relax our body. The other point I want to make is that try to be very mindful of the amount of pressure you are putting into grabbing this pen holder. I understand we have to apply pressure, and I understand we need to push, but be mindful of how strongly you are holding this pen, because that's gonna end up with like putting a lot of pressure into our tendons. So yes, we need to press down, but we need to be mindful so that we are not holding this pen as if our life is going with it. Okay, now I'm going to write something like fennel or fantasy. Let's do that. And let's try to synchronize the movements. So regarding to, do I hold my breath to try to get it perfect? Because I've heard this many times. Number one is no, you do not hold your breath while writing. Number two, perfection is an illusion. So please replace the word perfection with great or improved or mastery or experienced or I'm happy with it or I'm not that happy today, but I'm fine with progress. All of these will be a lot more helpful than working in your mind with the idea of perfectionism, because perfectionism is only like a mental trap that it can be good for in some aspects because it can motivate us to keep on going, but in the long run, perfectionism is I would call a toxic friend of us. So fantastic, mastery, great, better, improved, more balanced. It's a lot better than anything close to perfectionism. Now, let's write fantasy. So let's start letter F, going up. Letter A. I don't know if through the video will come across my breathing. If it did, you might have noticed that not in every single upstroke I was inhaling, and not in every single downstroke I was exhaling, but in a lot of these areas I was, and I was mindful of creating a downstroke and synchronizing, if possible, with the writing. Is this the best I can do? No, I'm sure I can do better. Am I happy with this first exercise? Yes. Why? Because every time I write one word or a message, every time, I have to be working out the messages, the combinations between every single pair of letters. And I know that depending which letter I have next to each other, the connection, it's going to be different. So when I have to work on any piece, I first write the entire message with pencil. Then once I work out the X height I need or I want, and how many words and how many combinations of letters I have, then I will go and ink depending on what it is for, one time or more than once. So the first time you write anything, it's just an approach to understanding which connections you have next to each other and how you can work it out for the next time to ease into the writing and to understand the connections and how to hold the writing together. So this is common mistakes, and don't hold your breath. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again very soon. You can find a lot of information about guidelines, materials, and other things in the description on this video. So see you again soon.